Friends YouTube channel, very good afternoon. Today is 6th of September and we are back with another Hindu and Indian Express analysis live on the YouTube channel. How many of you are here with me today? Quickly give me a response in the comment section and then we shall start. Riddhi is here, Sharve is here. Good afternoon, guys. Very good afternoon. Let's wait for a few more people to join in. We'll share the link of our session in the groups. We're just starting. We'll start in just 1 minute. We'll start in a minute. Waiting for more people to join in. Starting in a minute, guys. Okay, Gorvi is here, Deeptakshi is here, Mishika is here, Divij is here. Very good afternoon, all of you. Welcome back to the class. Today is 6th of September. I'm your host, Govind Singh, and we are back with another Hindu analysis. ठीक है, चलो. Let's start in 30 more seconds. Let more people join in, then we'll start today's analysis. हमारा जो मेंटी क्विज है वो हम मंडे को करेंगे सो दैट यू गाइस गेट मोर टाइम टू प्रिपेयर. Should I reveal the topic or should I keep it as a surprise? Menti quiz Monday ko. Do you want a surprise quiz or do you want me to tell you the topic? Prepare आप वैसे भी नहीं करते हो तो फिर टॉपिक बता के फायदा क्या है? सारे क्विज सरप्राइज क्विज ही होते हैं, है कि नहीं? ओके, गौरवी इज सेइंग सरप्राइज रखते हैं. डोंट रिवील, गिव अस सम हिंट्स. अच्छा, गिव यू सम हिंट्स. ठीक है, क्लास के बाद बात करते हैं इस बारे में. We'll talk about it after the class. K-pop is here. Good afternoon. Pushkar is here. Very good afternoon. Chalo, let's start the class. Let's start today's class. Good afternoon, Adrija. ठीक है, तो आज के टॉपिक्स ऑफ डिस्कशन हैं 3 टॉपिक्स एंड वोकैबुलरी. ऑल ऑफ दीज आर एडिटोरियल टॉपिक्स. द फर्स्ट इज रिगार्डिंग फूड सिक्योरिटी एक्ट. Everything about the PDS. What is PDS? Public Distribution System. We'll talk a little bit about the Food Security Act, what were the changes which were made through the Food Security Act. We'll talk a little bit about MSP. MSP क्या होता है? Tell me in the chat box. What is the full form of MSP? Then the second article is regarding Africa and critical minerals. How Africa is important for us to get the critical minerals and why we need the critical minerals and why Africa. We'll talk a little bit about all of that. Then we have another article on income inequality, again based on the same report by ILO, which we recently discussed in one of the previous Hindu analysis. So we'll talk a little bit more about another concept, which is called the UBI. So we'll discuss what is UBI, is it a good measure or is it a bad measure? And then we'll have our Vocab Express. So these are the 4 agendas for the day. If you guys are ready to start, quickly give me a ready in the chat box and then we shall start. Yes, minimum support price. Absolutely correct. Dhriti is here. Yorcham is here. George is here. Yashaswini is here. Lovely. Ready in the chat box and then we shall start. Quickly. Jaldi. ठीक है जी. Okay, everyone is ready. Let's start the analysis for the day. तो पहला हमारा टॉपिक है फूड सिक्योरिटी एक्ट एंड द पीडीएस. हाउ हैज फूड सिक्योरिटी एक्ट रिवैम्प्ड द पब्लिक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सिस्टम. अब ये पब्लिक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सिस्टम में क्या डिस्ट्रीब्यूट होता है? ऑब्वियसली फूड ग्रेन्स डिस्ट्रीब्यूट होते हैं. ठीक है, दिस इज रिगार्डिंग डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ फूड ग्रेन्स, जिसको आप कॉमन पार्लेंस में राशन भी कहते हो. ऑल्दो राशन एज एन इंग्लिश वर्ड का मतलब होता है एलोकेशन, बट क्योंकि उस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में इतना ज़्यादा वो यूज़ हो गया तो अब राशन फूड ग्रेन से ही रिलेट हो गया एक तरीके से. जैसे जीरोक्स रिलेट हो गया फोटोकॉपी से, वैसे जीरोक्स इज अ कंपनी. बट एनीवे, कमिंग बैक, फूड सिक्योरिटी एक्ट ने कैसे रिवैम्प किया है पीडीएस को, इससे पहले हमें थोड़ी सी हिस्ट्री पता होनी चाहिए इंडिया के कॉन्टेक्स्ट की, कि इंडिया में हमें फूड सिक्योरिटी की जरूरत पड़ी क्यों। तो अगर आपने थोड़ी बहुत मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री पढ़ी हो, आपकी जो मिडीवल हिस्ट्री पढ़ी हो, तो आपको पता होगा कि इंडिया में बहुत ज्यादा फैमाइन्स आते थे। ठीक है, फैमाइन्स क्या होते हैं पता है आप लोगों को? व्हाट इज अ फैमाइन? बेसिकली ड्रॉट आ जाता है, उसकी वजह से फिर खाने की कमी हो जाती है एंड पीपल स्टार्ट डाइंग आउट ऑफ हंगर, दैट इज अ फैमाइन और अ ड्रॉट। ड्रॉट अलग होता है, फैमाइन अलग होता है। ड्रॉट कॉजेज अ फैमाइन, क्योंकि सूखा आ जाएगा तो फिर ग्रोथ नहीं होगी, क्रॉप्स की ग्रोथ नहीं होगी तो फूड की शॉर्टेज हो जाएगी, फूड की शॉर्टेज हो जाएगी तो लोगों को खाने को मिलेगा नहीं और लोग ऑफ हो जाएंगे। खैर, तो ये तो था थोड़ा सा हमारा हिस्टोरिकल रीजन कि भाई इंडिया में जो है बहुत ज्यादा डिपेंडेंस है ऑन द वेदर, ऑन द मॉनसून व्हेन इट कम्स टू योर एग्रीकल्चर। तो इस वजह से हमें फूड सिक्योरिटी से रिलेटेड जल्दी से जल्दी कुछ करना था ताकि फैमाइन्स वाली चीजें दोबारा ना हो। ब्रिटिशर्स के टाइम पे काफी ज्यादा होती थी क्योंकि वो लोग हमारे पैसे से अयाशी कर लेते थे और इंडियंस को भूखा छोड़ देते थे। बट फॉर्चुनेटली नाउ वी आर इंडिपेंडेंट एंड अब हम चीज़ें खुद कंट्रोल कर सकते हैं। तो हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के जो प्रिंसिपल्स थे उसमें भी काफ़ी सारे वेलफेयर मैकेनिज्म्स थे। वी वर टॉकिंग अबाउट मेकिंग अ वेलफेयर स्टेट, अ सोशलिस्ट स्टेट। इंडिया के कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में सोशलिस्ट वर्ड पहले से था या बाद में ऐड हुआ है? और अगर ऐड हुआ है तो कब ऐड हुआ है? कैन यू गाइस टेल मी व्हेन डिड वी ऐड द वर्ड सोशलिस्ट टू आवर कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन? पता है किसी को? Bling Bling is saying, please tell me how to read faster. Okay, we'll talk about this after we have done with our analysis. Extreme drought, shortage of food, 46th Amendment Act 2002, 42nd Amendment Act. 42nd है या 46th है? चेक कर लो, बाद में आया था, 42nd अमेंडमेंट एक्ट से आया था। ठीक है, तो ये ध्यान रखना है आपको। बट कमिंग बैक, तो सोशलिस्ट इकोनॉमी में बेसिकली यही होता है कि गवर्नमेंट की भी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होती है टू टेक केयर ऑफ द सिटीजंस। गवर्नमेंट हैज अ सोशल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी टुवर्ड्स द सिटीजंस एज अपोज टू अ कैपिटलिस्ट इकोनॉमी वेयर एवरीवन हैज टू फेंड फॉर देमसेल्फ एंड गवर्नमेंट का उतना ज्यादा इन्वॉल्वमेंट नहीं होता इन पब्लिक पॉलिसी, इन पब्लिक वेलफेयर। एंड सोशलिज्म को अगर आप एक्सट्रीम एंड पे ले जाओ तो फिर वो कम्युनिज्म की तरफ चला जाता है, जहाँ पे बहुत ही ज्यादा गवर्नमेंट का इन्वॉल्वमेंट होता है, जैसे आपके एग्जांपल्स हैं रशिया या फिर चाइना। ठीक है, खैर पॉलिटिकल सिस्टम्स की बात नहीं कर रहे हम यहाँ पे बात कर रहे हैं कि बिकॉज इंडिया वाज अ सोशलिस्ट इकोनॉमी वी हैड टू डू समथिंग फॉर आवर फूड सिक्योरिटी। तो इंडिया में 1960s 70s में भी फूड सिक्योरिटी का बहुत ज्यादा कंसर्न था। हमें एक पॉइंट था जब हमें इंपोर्ट करने पड़ते थे फूड ग्रेन्स, बट उसके बाद हमने एक रेवोल्यूशन किया जिस वजह से हम फूड सफिशिएंट हो गए, सेल्फ सफिशिएंट हो गए। कैन यू टेल मी द नेम ऑफ द रेवोल्यूशन एंड आल्सो द फादर ऑफ दैट रेवोल्यूशन? जल्दी से इन द चैट बॉक्स। इट्स अ वेरी इजी क्वेश्चन but everyone should know this. Piyush is saying, what is Maoist? Because Maoists are people who create internal disturbances within the state. These are not terrorists, but these are people who, let's say, are disgruntled or disappointed or dissatisfied with the government. तो एक तरीके से जो हिंदी में आप इनको क्या कहते हो, मुझे वर्ड याद नहीं आ रहा। there's a certain word जो माओइस्ट के लिए बोला जाता है। I can't recall it right now, but Maoists are people who are anti-establishment, anti-government, anti a particular policy of the government, and they try to create disruptions, they try to create violence, they try to get their demands fulfilled by using forces, by using aggressive means, by using violence. ठीक है, मुझे वर्ड याद आएगा माओइस्ट का तो मैं बताऊंगा। खैर, coming back, the right answer is Green Revolution and the father is M.S. Swaminathan. Absolutely correct. Naxali is also a similar word, but हाँ नक्सली भी कह सकते हो, नक्सली कह सकते हो, correct. ठीक है, is the owner of News Click a Maoist? I'm not sure about this. I'll check out. Followers of Mao Zedong's ideologies. हाँ, origin उसका वही है, origin वही है कि माओ एक लीडर थे चाइना के एंड उनकी जो आइडियोलॉजी को फॉलो करते हैं उनको माओइस्ट बोला जाता है। बट आइडियोलॉजी में एक्सप्लेन करने की कोशिश कर रहा था कि एंटी एस्टैब्लिशमेंट कैसे है वो आइडियोलॉजी। बट यस, दैट इज द ओरिजिन ऑफ माओइस्ट, एब्सोल्युटली करेक्ट, माओ जेडोंग। ठीक है, तो कमिंग बैक कि हमें फूड सिक्योरिटी चाहिए थी तो हमने ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन किया। उसके साथ ही 1960s में हम एक और कॉन्सेप्ट लेके आए विच वाज द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ एमएसपी और मिनिमम सपोर्ट प्राइस, कि अगर कभी क्रॉप्स फेल हो जाते हैं, अगर कभी मॉनसून खराब हो जाता है, अगर कभी कोई भी ऐसे एग्रीकल्चर में दिक्कत आती है, तो फार्मर्स को एक मिनिमम प्राइस पे हम उनका फूड ग्रेन जो है बाय कर लेंगे। कौन बाय कर लेगा? गवर्नमेंट बाय कर लेगी। एंड फिर गवर्नमेंट उस फूड ग्रेन का क्या करेगी? गवर्नमेंट खुद तो खाएगी नहीं सारा, अकेले कैसे खाएंगे इतना सारा गेहूं और चावल? तो देवर लाइक कि इनको पब्लिक में डिस्ट्रीब्यूट कर देंगे, जिन लोगों को जरूरत है इसकी, जो अंडर प्रिविलेज लोग हैं, मार्जिनलाइज्ड लोग हैं, उनमें ये फूड क्रॉप्स को, नॉट फूड क्रॉप्स को, फूड ग्रेन्स को डिस्ट्रीब्यूट कर देंगे। तो फूड कॉर्पोरेशन ऑफ इंडिया ने जो है पब्लिक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सिस्टम बनाया है, जिसमें देयर वुड बी डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ फूड ग्रेन्स बिटवीन यूनियन एंड मल्टीपल स्टेट्स एज वेल। अब ये हमने पब्लिक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सिस्टम बना तो दिया, बट इसमें बहुत सारे प्रॉब्लम्स थे। क्या प्रॉब्लम्स थे इसमें इनिशियली सबसे ज्यादा प्रॉब्लम थे लीकेजेस के। लीकेजेस एज ए, ठीक है, गवर्नमेंट ने स्टोर कर लिया, अब गवर्नमेंट को पास ऑन करना है वो बेनिफिट टू लेट्स से पुअर पर्सन, टू अंडर प्रिविलेज्ड पर्सन, तो एक सिस्टम के थ्रू जाएगा वो। उस सिस्टम में बहुत सारे मिडलमैन होंगे, उस सिस्टम में बहुत सारे ब्यूरोक्रेट्स होंगे, तो ट्रिकल डाउन होते होते वो अनाज वहां तक पहुंचते पहुंचते या तो करप्शन की वजह से, बिकॉज ऑफ द मिडलमैन, वो पहुंच ही नहीं पाता था, या फिर खराब क्वालिटी का पहुंचता था, या फिर कम पहुंचता था। ठीक है, तो जितना उस अंडर प्रिविलेज पर्सन को मिलना चाहिए था, या तो उसको वो क्वांटिटी नहीं मिली, या क्वालिटी नहीं मिली, या इन मेनी केसेस मिला ही नहीं कुछ। तो ये लीकेजेस के बहुत ज्यादा इश्यूज थे इसमें। उसके अलावा दूसरे एंड से भी इश्यूज थे कि लोगों के एंड से कैसे करप्शन हो रहा था। लोग डुप्लीकेट राशन कार्ड्स वगैरह बनवा के डबल डबल ले रहे थे, फिर उसको सेल कर दे रहे थे, या फिर लोग अच्छा वाला राशन जो पीडीएस के थ्रू मिल रहा था उसको ले रहे थे और उसको बेच दे रहे थे मार्केट में, और अपना जो है मतलब थोड़ा कम क्वालिटी वाला यूज कर ले रहे थे ताकि एक्स्ट्रा एक इनकम बन जाए। तो ये बहुत सारे प्रॉब्लम्स थे, और भी काफी तरीके के प्रॉब्लम्स थे। तो इनको रिजॉल्व करने के लिए हमने बनाया नेशनल फूड सिक्योरिटी एक्ट। अब ये नेशनल फूड सिक्योरिटी एक्ट किस ईयर में आया, बताओ मुझे जल्दी से चैट बॉक्स में। When did the National Food Security Act come into picture? Dikshita is saying, can you explain in English? I can't understand Hindi well. Okay, sure. Not an issue. Not an issue at all. We can do English. I am pretty well versed with English as well. 2013, absolutely correct. 2013 was the year when we got a National Food Security Act. And what was the National Food Security Act? It basically was implemented to counter the problems of the PDS system, to resolve the loopholes of the PDS system, to stop these leakages and to increase the penetration of the PDS scheme as well, to take it to a larger extent, to bring more beneficiaries under the public distribution system. So if you talk about numbers, it talked about 75% of the rural population being benefited by it and 50% of the urban population being benefited by it. Apart from this, the Food Security Act also talked about women empowerment. So if women are present in a household, then women would be becoming the head of the household in order to get this particular ration, all of that. And this also guaranteed a certain ration which a person would get, which an individual would get. If the person cannot get that ration, the person would get a compensatory amount, जिसको हिंदी में वी कॉल भत्ता। ठीक है, तो यू कैन कॉल इट एन अलाउंस, यू कैन कॉल इट अ कॉम्पेंसेटरी अमाउंट, बट राशन मिलता है या भत्ता मिलता है। तो पीडीएस, दिस particular act popularized PDS to a greater extent, and this became a very vital scheme for the underprivileged people. They also tried to bring in creative technological solutions like linking your ration card with your Aadhaar card, like bringing an initiative called One Nation, One Ration Card. Why would One Nation, One Ration Card be required? Because initially, when every state citizen had their own ration card, which had their state identity, when these workers, when these underprivileged people, let's say, moved from one state to the other in search of job employment opportunities, then they were denied the ration facilities, the PDS facilities in that particular state. For example, a migrant worker from, let's say, the state of Chhattisgarh moves to the state of, let's say, Punjab. And there he shows his ration card, which is of Chhattisgarh. The Punjab government would probably deny him the food grains because they would cater to the Punjab farmers or the Punjab underprivileged people, right? Now, to counter this particular problem, they nationalized it. They made it very uniform, so that One Nation, One Ration Card would be there, and everyone would have just a uniform ration card, just like everyone has an Aadhaar card. So there would be a national identity rather than a state identity. This would counter this problem of the migrant workers. So this was another thing which was important when it comes to your National Food Security Act. Apart from this particular article addresses a major problem. It says that okay, we have been fairly successful at implementing the public distribution system. We have closed a lot of loopholes when it comes to the dispersal of food grains, but we still need to work on a very important aspect, which is nutrition. The food grains which we are providing only caters to one aspect of the nutritional value which an individual should get, and it is not a, let's say, wholesome or a holistic provision for nutrition for these underprivileged people. And we should also include things like pulses, things like edible oils, and all of these things which make it more of an overall coverage when it comes to the nutritional value. Now, there are multiple other aspects to this particular issue of public distribution system. When you talk of private partnership, why do we talk of private partnership when it comes to the public distribution system? We also had a very long debate when it came to the three farm laws, farm bills, which were taken back. So, why do we speculate the? Why do we want to incentivize the private players to, enter this agricultural domain? Can you guys guess the reason? What are the reasons behind the government trying to incentivize the private sector coming into the agricultural domain and get involved in this? Any guesses? Why would we want privatization of our agriculture? Guesses? It will increase our production. Yes, absolutely. It will increase production. Quick decisions could be a reason. Yes, why not? There were few challenges which the government was facing. The government wanted to resolve those challenges. They are still facing these challenges. They have been facing these challenges. One is the exchequer expense, which happens because of MSP. So MSP also puts a fiscal burden on the economy. You have to provide MSP. You have to buy the grains at a lesser price and also give them for free. And the government is always short of funds. So MSP definitely creates a burden on the government. That is one reason. Another reason you could possibly think of is the problem of storage and transportation. So when you buy such large quantities of food grains, you also have to store it in a safe space. You have to have large cold storages where the grains would not go bad, or where the grains would not get infested by pests or rodents like rats and all. And the government cannot facilitate such large storage because the government does not have such large storehouses. So they wanted to incentivize private companies to come into the system, build large storehouses, build large cold storages, so that the storage problem can be resolved. There's also the problem of pilferage during transportation. During transportation, also food grains are not effectively transported from one place to another. There's also leakages in the transportation and logistics department, which if the private sector would take care of, then probably it would also reduce. Another thing is the MSP. This is another challenge which is, let's say, from a different point of view or from a different tangent of thinking, is the MSP which we are providing is inaccurate when it comes to the coverage of MSP and the PDS, because the data which we are using to disperse MSP based on the income, based on the ration cards, is based on the census of 2011, which is a very old data. 2011, it's been like 13 years, more than 13 years. So since the past 13 years, we have not updated our records, as in who requires MSP, who does not require MSP, who requires the PDS system, who does not. So that is also a concern which the government always has. Although on the other hand, government also does not want to have this census. So I don't understand why they cry about this. But anyway, the point is that they cannot also store large amounts of food grains, not just because of storage, but one could argue that why to store all of this? You can probably export or distribute all of it. Don't store it. The problem there lies is you do not know whether the next season would be as fruitful or as good as this season, because monsoons are uncertain in India. We do not know when monsoon would arrive. We do not know if crops would fail. So they have to have a backup option in case, let's say, the next round of crops is not feasible. For example, if you, let's say, sow the wheat crop and the wheat crop then grows and the government buys it on MSP, stores it, and then the government decides, okay, let's disperse all of this extra storage. The next year when you sow the wheat crop, rains do not come, wheat does not grow properly, there's a wheat shortage, there's massive inflation, wheat prices increases. If wheat price increases, you are, okay, I was going to use some other word, but you are messed up. Okay, so government does not want that. So to also create a safeguard, they also have to have a certain amount of storage. They cannot really disperse all of it or export all of it, and that is why the public private partnership thing becomes very lucrative. But उसमें भी बहुत सारे challenges and there are multiple downsides to private players entering the agriculture domain. There is predatory pricing, there is them manipulating market prices, there is them diluting the concept of MSP, there is them doing black marketing. There are multiple other cons and negatives of including private players into the agricultural domain as well. And yeah, these are the multiple point of views which the article addresses. The article also talks about a few things such as moving away from very tech savvy mechanisms when it comes to dispersal of PDS system and the ration cards. It says that we should focus more on inclusive mechanisms so that more people can be brought under the ambit of the PDS and the MSP, rather than trying to be tech savvy and trying to implement technological measures which the farmers or which the underprivileged people are finding it challenging to cater to. For example, they have given the example of Aadhaar card based ration card or eKYC based ration card. All of that is also discussed, right? So yeah, there's that aspect. There's also another aspect of environmentalists being against this process of PDS and MSP. Why are environmentalists against MSP or public distribution system? Can anyone take a guess? Blink is saying, so where do they store the buffer stock? They only store as much as they can, and they probably outsource it to private companies. They spend it themselves, they keep the control with themselves, but probably outsource it. Okay, we have few responses. Higher investment in profit as a result of better quality crops. Farmers are not solely dependent on government agencies for selling their crops. Yes, that was another reason. To tackle corruption among middlemen, also privatization can lead to more cost effective services. Yes, all of these are benefits. And all of these benefits have their interlinked cons as well. Yes, Food Corporation of India has granaries, which I initially mentioned. What was the question I asked you all? The question was, why are environmentalists against MSP? The reason is that when MSP is guaranteed for certain food crops, let's say for wheat and rice, the farmers would be incentivized only to sow wheat and rice. They would not be sowing other crops because there's no MSP on that, there's no guarantee on that. And if they keep sowing wheat and rice in that same particular piece of land, it would deplete the soil of its nutrients, it would deplete the soil of its water, it would lead to groundwater depletion, as Deeptakshi rightly mentioned. And there are multiple other allied reasons as well. There are reasons of nutritional value of that particular place going down. There is the soil issue, water issue, and of course the prices of other crops would also increase because they are not being fulfilled. The demand is not being fulfilled. So this is what the article tells you about. Let's go to the article. Let's take an overview of the article. Food Security Act has revamped the PDS. During discussion of the National Food Security Act, there was nervousness about guaranteeing food security through the PDS. Nervousness stemmed from poor record of PDS according to the NSS data of 2011-12. अब देखो ये data भी, this data is also really old. Leakages were at 41.7%. Main argument in favor of continuing PDS was that state had undertaken PDS reforms and had witnessed major improvements. Then you have the household consumption expenditure survey, and it says that it is the first large scale national representative survey after implementation of NFSA, which suggests that PDS leakages were down to 22%. So we have controlled the leakages through our National Food Security Act, which was the purpose of the act. Understanding the data and methodology. So here they have explained how leakages happen. They have talked about this Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana. This is a very large scheme which was operational till 2022, and after COVID it was discontinued. To arrive at the estimates presented here, NFSA, including tide over rations, non-NFSA PMGKY is matched with HCES PDS purchase of paid for and free wheat and rice by households. Okay, let's see if we have any important point takeaway. So they are basically talking about the expansion of PDS here and how it has improved the numbers. In spite of improvement in coverage, the center is falling short of the coverage mandated by the NFSA, which is 50% for rural population and 75% of urban, which I just told you in the beginning. Around 66% is the current coverage. Earlier work based on administrative data suggests that only 59% had access to PDS as NFSA beneficiaries. Similarly, according to SCES, out of 70% who access the PDS, only 57 to 61 have NFSA ration cards. The rest are non-NFSA beneficiaries. Reforms undertaken by early reforming states, doorstep delivery of food grains, digitization, deprivatization, all of this is happening. All of these are reforms under NFSA. Then you have integration of Aadhaar, especially Aadhaar-based biometric, led to improvements in the PDS. Data from primary surveys do not support this. Two surveys in Jharkhand shed light on this issue. Study in Muralidharan, Nihas, Sukhantar found that leakages before introduction of ABBA, which is your Aadhaar-based authentication, were already less than 20%. Dreze, Khera, and Somanchi reported that purchase entitlement ratios in offline villages and ABBA villages were virtually the same. That means the ABBA failed in its purpose. Both the surveys found little evidence of ghost cards. Ghost cards are basically duplicate ration cards. Somewhat puzzlingly, leakages in states where PDS traditionally worked better have not experienced further improvements. In fact, some estimated leakages have increased from 12 to 25. In perspective, they are saying instead of expending energy on ill-conceived measures such as ongoing eKYC drive for PDS that can easily derail the PDS, scarce government capacity should be channeled to expediting the delayed census that is leading to exclusion of over 100 million people. Other items such as pulses and edible oil remain relevant. So this is the crux of the article, that we should focus on the census first and fulfilling the nutrition first rather than more making it more tech savvy. Okay, all right, let's go back to our presentation. The next article is very interesting. It's regarding Africa and critical minerals, how Africa can make India's critical mineral mission shine. So we have recently identified 30 missions which are critical for us as a country. And these critical minerals are found in abundance in the continent of Africa. We have already been mining these minerals from many African countries. South Africa is a prime example. Apart from that, we are also taking some minerals from Australia, some from US. With US, we also have a partnership called ICET. You guys remember this? What is the full form of ICET? Quickly tell me in the chat box. What is ICET? So primarily when we talk about these critical minerals, for example, let's say lithium. Lithium is one very critical mineral which we have identified. And this is a sort of mineral which is, let's say, required for development activities in a lot of different domains and sectors. You require it in your defense sector, you require it in your EV sector, you require it in your manufacturing sector, you require it in your semiconductor sector. So these have very multifaceted uses, and of course they are critical. That's why we have classified them as critical minerals, and we need to form negotiations and tie-ups with other countries where we can procure these critical minerals, these 30 declared critical minerals. Recently we have also allowed private players to enter this particular space. Why would we allow private players to do the mining of critical minerals? Why would we allow foreign direct investment when it comes to critical minerals? Why have we built a joint venture called Kabil? Are you guys aware of the word Kabil, which is a joint initiative by 3 public sector companies? What is Kabil? Can anyone tell me the full form of Kabil in the chat box? We have discussed this before. Initiative on critical and emerging technologies. Not crucial, it's critical. And it's not engineering technology, it's emerging technologies. Okay? You need to remember this. When is Menti? Menti is on Monday. It's a surprise quiz. Yeah, it's initiative. It's not innovative. Initiative for critical and emerging technologies. Absolutely. What was my question? My question was, why are we allowing privatization of mining? simply because the government does not have enough funds. Mining is a very expensive activity. After mining, you just do not use the minerals directly, you also have to process them. So you have to establish industries to process those mined minerals. And the government does not have funds to do this expensive process in different countries and import these particular minerals. So they have allowed private players to do their bidding, private players to enter the space, and also foreign direct investment is allowed. We recently made a amendment to our Mines and Minerals Act as well. The Mines and Minerals Act of which year? Can you guys tell the year? Mines and Minerals Act of 1957. We have removed six elements, or you could say six different compounds, elements, from this particular list of atomic elements, or important for atomic energy elements, whatever you call it. Why we have removed these particular six elements from this list? Six minerals. Minerals is the right word, I would say. Why would we remove six minerals from the atomic list? Because in the atomic list, private players cannot mine those minerals. Only public sector companies and the government can mine the minerals which are in the atomic list mentioned in the Mines and Minerals Act of 1957. And by removing these six particular minerals from the atomic list, we have incentivized private players to enter this particular space. Let me see if anyone knows the full form of Kabil. Khanji Bidain. No, it's not Bidain, it's Bidesh. I think it's Bidesh, not Bidain. Yeah. Khanji Bidesh India Limited. Absolutely correct. And it's a collaboration between NALCO, HCL, and CPSE, I guess. Yeah, CPSE. Khanij Bidesh India Limited. Yes, that is the correct full form. So this is a initiative by the government where three different companies, organizations have come together, and this Kabil organization would do bidding on minerals reserves. They have also already started their bidding in a lot of countries. Can you tell me which country have they started bidding already? Where are they working already? Does anyone know? Tell me in the chat box. Anyway, coming back. So, another reason why Africa is very important for us, and we need to take a fast measure, a fast move towards importing these critical minerals and technologies from Africa, is because China is aggressively moving towards tapping this African reserves. Africa, if you talk about it as a continent, has approximately one third of the world's critical mineral reserves, 30% of the world's reserves. And we need to take advantage of that. As soon as China tries to take over and take advantage of these critical technologies and minerals, India would find it really tough to penetrate because China does not let anyone dominate where it has entered the space. So India needs to hurry up and forge partnerships with these African nations. And using private capital, we need to incentivize them to give us those tenders to do those mining operations, to outsource those mining operations where we can extract those minerals, rich minerals, which are important for us, which are critical minerals for us, and thus be the first movers and take advantage of this. We have also taken up multiple initiatives in Africa. For example, under the ISA, which is your International Solar Alliance, we are making solar projects, I think worth $2 billion in Africa. Apart from that, we also have a partnership when it comes to import of crude oil. We take approximately 10-15% of our oil comes from Africa. So Africa is already a partner for us with many other fronts, but this is something which we need to tap very quickly. There are many critical minerals which are being found in India as well, but the quality of those minerals is not up to the mark. If even if the quality is up to the mark, we do not have the requisite, let's say, capital or the infrastructure to process those minerals and then use them into our technologies. So we need to look outside. We need to tag Africa as a continent and work towards it. Let's look at it on the newspaper as well. Let's see what they are saying. In the Union Budget, Finance Minister Sitaraman announced the setting up of Critical Mineral Mission. In the August, Ministry of Mines organized a seminar to discuss its objectives. Officials noted efforts are being fast-tracked in mission mode towards three aims: expand domestic production, prioritize recycling of critical minerals, and incentivize overseas acquisition of assets. Work on these fronts is underway. Amendment made to Mines and Minerals Act, removing six minerals from the atomic list, thus allowing private sector to explore these in India, which I was telling you. To engage with mineral-rich countries overseas with a mandate to secure supply of critical minerals, joint venture Kabil was founded in 2019. First major agreement for lithium exploration was signed in January 24, owned by Cayman in the Argentina region, Catamarca province in Argentina. Major and medium scale mining companies in India are also seeking opportunities. However, India's capacity for exploration and processing is nascent. Nascent is it's still developing, it's in a very early stage. It lacks manufacturing capacity for end use components and need to upscale its labor force, which is crucial for battery manufacturing. So, these critical minerals are very important for manufacturing of your batteries, EV manufacturing. Situating Africa and India's supply chain. As I said, that Africa has 30% of the world's known critical mineral reserves, familiar geography for Indian enterprise. New Delhi shares deep political, economic, and historical connections with the continent, with wide commercial networks, land of the future, Africa's importance highlighted by our minister, collaborating on critical minerals will bring in new dimension to the multifaceted energy partnerships. Bilateral trade of $98 billion already happens. 43 is attributed to mining and mineral sectors. Significant portion already invested in Africa. Public sector units, 15% of the total demand of India's oil is met by Africa, alongside rising imports of natural gas, minerals, and fuels. And Solar Alliance, $2 billion solar projects in Africa, which I just told you. Building a resilient supply chain to Africa is being imagined at a time when African governments are employing an array of policy instruments from a pit to port model. Tanzania is developing a multi-metal processing facility. Zimbabwe, Namibia banned export of raw minerals to ensure value addition, and all of this is happening. Then there is the China factor, which I told you about. Increasing international attention, especially extent of control China exerts over value chain, poses an economic and security risk for India. Early acquisition of assets, development of processing and manufacturing capabilities. Beijing enjoys enormous influence already. They have done this $7 billion minerals for infrastructure deal in DRC, which is your Democratic Republic of Congo. This is related to cobalt mining. Then we have opportunities for collaboration. What are the opportunities? India signing multiple MOUs with countries like Tunisia, Tanzania, Ghana, Zambia, Zimbabwe, cooperation in different aspects, different fronts. There's increasingly nuanced role of Indian technology startups across mining chain. Then we have utilizing technology, we have reconnaissance services, whole suite of services, private technology companies. On African priorities, Merit Kitao, director of African Mineral Development Center, said, only way to transform lives is to add value. Therefore, India's critical mineral mission should prioritize responsible practices in an era that threatens to be dominated by geopolitics of a not so green energy transition. Okay, so that is the article for you. Beside this is another article which we are going to discuss. That's regarding income inequality. Let me look at Argentina is the right answer. Kabil is working in Argentina. Let's come back to newspaper. Yes. Okay, so this is another article regarding income inequality, how there's a increasing divide and gap between the rich and the poor. In the previous article which we discussed, we talked about three, four ways by which we can address this growing income inequality. We talked about education and skill. We talked about labor practices. We talked about creating jobs and employment. We talked about progressive taxation. I hope you all remember all of those things. So this income inequality and all these articles are based on the recent report by the International Labour Organization. And the report's name is World Employment and Social Outlook Report. This report gives us very interesting findings. One of the findings which it says is approximately one third of young women across the world are not in the workforce, which is double of the young men. So there are approximately 13-14% young men who are not in the workforce, and there are approximately 30% young women who are not in the workforce. So we need to work towards women empowerment as well when it comes to income inequality. Then, of course, there is the concern of automation and AI taking up people's jobs. So we need to address that issue, how we can widely distribute the technology and create more jobs, create progressive taxation schemes. One interesting thing and a unique thing which this article discusses, which I wanted to talk to you about, is universal basic income. So, what is this concept of universal basic income? This concept basically states that the government should start providing For example, the government provides minimum support price for grains. Similarly, the government would start providing a minimum amount of money to everyone, a universal basic income to everyone. For example, let's say 5,000 rupees per month, the government would give to everyone who is, let's say, below the poverty line. Distribute basic income to everyone. And the article argues that whether this can close the gap between the rich and the poor. Now, what do you think? Is this a good move or a bad move? Having universal basic income is a good initiative or a bad initiative? If yes, then why? If no, then why? Let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, it's the similar logic as saying that why not print unlimited money and distribute it among people to end poverty? What's your take on it? Universal basic income. Good thing or a bad thing? Sharve says bad as it will be a huge burden on economy. Absolutely. That's a brilliant point. It would be a very big burden on the government, on the economy, on the finances. Fiscal deficit would increase. What else? Any other thoughts? No thoughts? Okay, your chum says good because it will reduce inequality. Alternative is pay for the work done. What if the people are not skilled? What if these are unskilled people, which mostly are people who are below the poverty line are mostly unskilled? People should not be valued according to their education or would reduce motivation. Yes, that's a brilliant point. This would reduce the drive for people to work. If अगर आपको घर बैठे बैठे 5,000 रुपये मिलने लगे तो आप कोई काम क्यों ढूंढोगे? It would promote lethargy. It would promote a mindset which disincentivizes people to find jobs, to work, to upskill themselves, to elevate themselves out of the poverty, especially in a country like India where people just want freebies. And if you start giving a free basic income, then you would run into a lot of chaos apart from the fiscal burden on the government. So, in my personal opinion, this is not the right move, especially for a country like India. Universal basic income is not something which India should possibly look at. We should look at alternative measures of curbing income inequality, like creating jobs is one. Minimum wages is one. Minimum wages is something we should focus on rather than providing a minimum basic income. We should incentivize people to work. If people are incentivized to work and they are given an assurance that you would be promised a certain minimum wage, then that is a better thing. People are working to get that wage. Apart from that, you need to work on education and skill. Then progressive taxation is of course there. So these are the things which I believe are more beneficial as compared to universal basic income. Let's see what the article is saying in this regard. So firstly, they give you a lot of numbers which are from the report. They say that 1.6% drop in global labor income. We discussed that yesterday. 40% of this decline is due to pandemic. We also discussed that yesterday. 2.4 trillion lost in wages, half of India's nominal GDP. Study highlights that one third of world's young women are not in employment, education, or training. It estimates, which is double of young men, which I just told you, alarming for developing nations with growing working age population, such as the country like India. In fact, ILO report on the status of employment in India estimates that 80% of its unemployed are youth, which is a very concerning fact. And you are saying give 5,000 rupees per month to this youth and not incentivize them to do something. This coupled with the government's recent prescriptions to private sector to invest in labor intensive employment points to a crisis in jobs growth and rising inequality. Then there is talk of universal basic income. Several countries have been mooting the idea of UBI or a floor to stand on, as economists have called it. A referendum in Switzerland on UBI was defeated. Referendum, what is a referendum? In a referendum, you let's say talk about a policy and you open it for voting to public. So, for example, Modi ji comes on TV tomorrow and says, भाइयों बहनों, मैं सोच रहा हूँ कि यूनिवर्सल बेसिक इनकम ले आई जाए, आपका क्या कहना है, लाई जाए या ना लाई जाए, और आपको वोट करना हो, yes या no, ठीक है? So that is called a referendum, where you ask the people what they want. So yeah, referendum in Switzerland was defeated while Democratic candidate and American tech investor Andrew Yang, in his aborted 2020 bid to the White House, mainstreamed a freedom dividend of $1,000 a month for every American adult. Congress leader Rahul Gandhi too made a proposal of 12,000 a month for every family during his election campaign, calling it a final assault on poverty. Several industry reports point to high paying job creation due to automation and AI to counter the jobless growth theory. But again, this only highlights an acceleration in income inequality. Indeed, with the apparent advantages of AI being irreversible, perhaps a global goal towards a UBI could address sustainable development goals or reduce inequality within and among countries. It is perhaps time that developing nations like India consider the reintroduction of an inheritance tax as a measure to reduce wealth inequality. What is inheritance tax? So, for example, if your dad is a billionaire and you inherit all that wealth, you have to pay a hefty inheritance tax on it to address the wealth inequality. So, basically, take from the rich and give it to the poor concept. But I don't think that's fair or justified. You should work towards bridging the gap by incentivizing the poor, by upskilling the poor, uplifting the poor, rather than suppressing the rich who are already creating jobs. Anyway, what I think does not matter. What matters is what the policymakers of the country think. ठीक है चलो. I think that's all for today's analysis. अर्नव इज सेइंग चुप. अब अर्नव चुप मुझे बोल रहे हैं या चैट बॉक्स में किसी को बोल रहे हैं, दैट वो तो अर्नव ही जानते हैं. बट आई होप अर्नव दैट वट एवर इज बॉदरिंग यू, ट्रबलिंग यू इन लाइफ, यू गेट थ्रू इट, बिकॉज काफी गुस्सा है लग रहा है आपके अंदर भरा हुआ. Anyway, कोई बात नहीं. चलो, that brings us to the end of today's Hindu analysis. We'll quickly do our vocabulary and wrap up today's session. So the first word for the day is inimical. Inimical simply means tending to obstruct or harm. So you could say that this word relates to enemy from a certain sense. Enemy से याद रख सकते हो आप inimical, tending to obstruct or harm. Adversarial, adversary, antagonistic, opposites हो गए, friendly, hospitable, non-antagonistic. These policies are inimical to the interest of the society, as in opposite to the interest of the society or harmful to the interest of the society. The second word is accretion. Accretion simply means the process of growth or increase, typically by gradual accumulation of additional layers or matter. So धीरे धीरे करके growth होना, monumental growth होना, धीरे धीरे addition. That is called accretion. You could also call it accrual. Boost is a synonym. Addition is a synonym. Antonyms are abatement. Abatement means reduction. Decline also means that. Decrease also means that. The fund was increased by the accretion of new shareholders. So by the new shareholders bringing in more of their money, the fund grew. Okay. Then you have third, which is piddling. Piddling simply means something which is pathetically trivial or trifling. Something very, let's say, बेकार की चीज, छोटी सी चीज, फालतू सी चीज. Trivial, trifling, petty. Consequential, considerable, important. I don't want to hear about the piddling little details. Unnecessary, trifling, and trivial. Inconsequential. These are your piddling details. Okay, so piddling is word number 1, accretion is word number 2, and inimical is word number 3. Inimical means obstructing, accretion means growing layer by layer, piddling means trifling or trivial. And that brings us to the end of today's Hindu analysis. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask. If not, then we'll meet again on Monday with our Hindu analysis and the Menti quiz, the surprise Menti quiz. My camera is stuck. Is that so? हो सकता है bandwidth issue, probably. Okay, Blink is saying how to increase reading speed. So there are multiple ways. There are traditional ways where people would suggest you that increase your vocabulary so that you don't get stuck on tough words or phrases. But I believe that's a very lengthy and time-taking process. George is saying, what is the topic for tomorrow? The topic for tomorrow would be told to you by Salik sir. I don't take classes on Saturday and Sunday. I'll be meeting you again now on Monday. But on Monday, there's a special session, a special strategy session, which would tell you how to prepare about CLAT and ALET together. So make sure you attend that session for sure. It's a special strategy session on preparing for CLAT and ALET together. Don't miss out on that. I think it's at 6:30 p.m. or 8 p.m. I'll let you know the timings. For Menti quiz, the topic is surprise. It's a surprise Menti quiz on Monday. How to stop sub-vocalization. by visual reading, by trying to read words by just looking at them and forcing yourself to not sub vocalize them, not pronounce them in your mind. And that is a time taking process. It takes at least 4 or 5 weeks to get a control over your sub vocalization. What you can do is start with looking at a few words. Let's say if there's a sentence with 5 words, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, start with looking at 2 words, start looking at the central point of these 2 words and try to make a sense of these 2 words without sub vocalizing them, by reading them just through your eyes and processing them, comprehending them. Once you're done with this exercise, do to the next 2 words, next 2 words. Do this process for at least 7 to 10 days, and then move to reading 3 words together, then move to reading 4 words together. And you'll come at a point where you'll be able to read even 2 sentences together by looking at the center of a sentences without having to sub vocalize. And that is how you develop it. So it's a time taking process. It's a process which you have to commit to, you have to dedicate yourself to it, and would take at least 4 to 5 weeks to get there, but you still have time, you can do it. So give it a shot, give it a good shot. Another aspect of speed reading is reading the questions first and then coming back to reading your passage. That can definitely save you some time if you are able to mark your keywords in the questions and then look for those keywords in the passage. That is a good approach to follow. You can probably experiment it out. Again, this also takes 4 to 5 weeks to master. If you are doing your passage first and questions later, then take a call. Take a call if you want to experiment with this approach or not. Okay, so that is a little bit about reading quickly. Could you briefly tell what is subvocalization? Okay, so you asked me the question how to stop subvocalization, so I kind of assumed that you know. Subvocalization is जब आप मन में बोलते हो किसी चीज को. To put it very simply, when you read something, for example, ask me a question लिखा है यहाँ पे स्लाइड पे. आप इसको पढ़ते हो तो आपके दिमाग में एक साउंड चलती है ना, ask me a question ये लिखा हुआ है, वो साउंड नहीं चलनी चाहिए. That internal voice should stop. That voice in your head should stop. That is sub vocalization. Vocalization is को बोल के पढ़ना, ask me a question, that is vocalizing. Sub vocalizing is vocalizing it in your brain. That should also stop. Okay, I think that is all for today. RTNLU offline में सैयद साहा सर कौन है यार? I'm not aware, sorry about that. Are studies relaxed in Nalsar? Should I spoil the suspense for you? Are studies relaxed or not? Studies, I would say, are balanced. I wouldn't call them relaxed. I wouldn't call them hectic. I would call them balanced. So if you are decent enough at time management, you would be able to sail through quite smoothly. Dhriti is saying, I had to miss out on your recent classes due to school exams. Do you have any advice for me to catch up? Okay. Look at the topics initially in the first 5 minutes. What are the topics? If you feel that the topics are extra relevant when it comes to GK perspective being asked in the competitive exam, then probably look at those topics first if you have less time. If you have ample time, then you can probably watch the class at 2x and cover it up. Mostly classes are 1 hour or lesser, so you can cover in half an hour, one class in half an hour. If there are a backlog of 4 to 5 classes, that would take you just a couple of hours. Most people say NLS is hectic. Yes, NLS is hectic. That is very true. I would vouch for that fact. लॉ करके कोई यूपीएससी भी करता है, बहुत लोग करते हैं, काफी लोग करते हैं. A very close friend of mine is doing UPSC, preparing for UPSC. Okay, chalo. I think that's all for today, guys. I'll see you all again on Monday in another Hindu analysis. Till then, have a very good weekend. Have a productive one. Keep learning, keep preparing, and see you all. Take care. Signing off.